Welcome to Hero or Disruptor, exploring the power of teaching metaphors. I'm Garth Neufeld. In this series, Jane Hallinan and I take a deep dive into the hero's journey as applied to teaching, while also considering the transformational power of disruption. So where will you see yourself? As a guide to the next generation of heroes? Or as a disruptor of the status quo? Wherever you find yourself, thanks for joining us on this journey. Welcome back, Jane.
Thank you.
Well, we are nearing the end of the hero's journey, and we last time talked about what it means to be a guide, what it means to be on the student end of that, who says yes to the guide, and then what the guide has to offer, the steps that a guide has to offer in order to bring a student along. And, you know, I thought this was a good time to revisit a question, because we've talked a long time through this. What is, now let me get this right for myself. What does a student want? Like not what does this, not why is a student at college, university, like something like fundamentally when it comes to education or transformation or development. I thought maybe we could spitball a little bit about what does a 18 to 22-year-old student, what are they looking for in their, you know, in their
journey?
Yeah, in their journey. Mm-hmm.
Well, I wish I could be more optimistic about this, but I think from personal experience, recalling the millions of years ago when I was that age, and also working with current students, I'm going to say the vast majority of students, what they want from the college journey is they want the paper. They want the diploma that allows them to gain access to whatever world they think lies beyond graduation. And that puts them at odds with what we want. Yes, we want them to have a degree, but our goals are ridiculously bigger than let's get you the paper. Our goals are let's have you discover who you are. Let's build your skill set. Let's help you define your direction in life. And I think most students, the majority, are there to get the box checked. Okay. Yes.
I realized it was a faulty question because it was going to lead there, even if I didn't want it to go there. But let's then talk about this. What do we think students need? So, and the reason why I said, what do they want is maybe I have a bias that there is something fundamentally within them that actually wants those healthier things that you're talking about, those more meaningful, kind of central, transformational things. And yet they are, I feel like I'm kind of channeling some Rogers here, right? With this true self stuff, that there is something within them that knows what they need. And you just mentioned three things that you think they need, and I just jotted them down, and I can't read my own writing. Something about discovery. I really cannot read my own writing right now, so I'm trying. Direction and skills. Okay, So let's talk about when a student enters into this undergraduate process, what do we think, Jane and Garth, think that they need? And so even if you have to repeat yourself, we'll start there again.
Okay.
What do we think they need? So we could start with skills, because that's a big one, right? So what are the skills that those students
and are
need?
we talking about in general, a college education or an education in psychology?
Good question.
Because I would answer differently depending on what you're choosing.
I think let's go broad. Let's go broad with, just this transition, this emerging adulthood. What do students need at this time?
I feel, I want to say, I feel somewhat expert on this, having written a textbook on this topic a few years ago. Your Guide to College Success. Here's what you need. I think what students need is they need an introduction to what it means to be in a community of scholars. And for students whose families are not first gen, they have probably grown up with lots of those expectations being bandied about implicitly as part of how they grew up and how goals got set for them or how they set their own goals. For first gen students, this is an alien conversation. And so I think anyone who teaches a first year student needs to understand that you are an agent of socialization to help students get what this big transition is about, that this isn't high school and independence is the name of the game and personal responsibility is ramped up and no one's going to hold your hand. Well, few people are going to hold your hand. So to help students simply begin to understand even basic terminology, how to get around, how to approach professors, how to email professors. I mean, the basic strategies that will help you become more successful, I think, is what brand new students need.
Yeah. And that socialization, it changes, right? So you're talking about these incoming students who may not kind of have those tools at their disposal or those environments at their disposal. But then from freshman to senior, that socialization changes. I mean, or ramps up, right? So I love that you said a community of scholars. And, there's an onboarding process. And then at some point that we want those students to be able to shift identity from I'm new to this to I am a part of it.
I certainly think the middle years is the period where students will get feedback, not just from their professors, but from their peers, because chances are good, whatever course of study they're taking, they're going to be involved in projects that involve them with other people. I just heard this week, I forget which class it was, but a student was reflecting on the fact that he was genuinely surprised at the diversity of opinion that he discovered in his mid-range classes, because he'd made some assumptions that the world was much more homogenous, meaning just like me, than it really was. And so when he got into classes that now challenged him because the opinions didn't cohere with his own, he found that really challenging. And to his credit, also said, it really opened me up to be able to understand the value of having this protected space, this wonderful space to be able to exchange ideas, even with people that I don't necessarily agree with. So I think those middle years often consolidates, are students going to get on board, or are they going to be cruising through whatever major they have willy-nilly, without a plan, without intent, because there are students that do that. I'm aware even in the beginning of my career, as students would walk across the stage, sometimes there would be a collective gasp from the professors who are thinking, oh, how did that happen? Because I don't see that student as graduating material. And the fact is, a student was able to get through getting a degree because everyone was practicing collective benefit of the doubt, and no one was putting that student to the test and allowing that student to learn from failure. But, I know that wasn't an isolated episode. I don't have that feeling very often now in the larger environment that I'm teaching in. Of course, I don't know all the students now. But I think there is a considerable number of students, sadly, that they pay their tuition dollar, but they don't get their tuition's money worth because they are essentially unchanged.
And in some of these cases, there's no guide who is stepping in to say, to our point last conversation, this isn't cutting it. And you need to strive for more, for greater things, for transformation, the things that are going to get you there.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, please.
Another episode this week, this is out of my capstone class. I'll disguise the name in case he's embarrassed. But let's just say Neil came to me and did an absolutely marvelous capstone presentation and then said, I confess I haven't been in this for the right reasons. And now that I'm at the end of my 4-year career, I think I could do graduate school, but I think I haven't shown anybody that I can do it until now. And have I permanently fouled up my life was the question. Now, the fact that the question occurred to him and moved him from the meandering soul that he had been to someone who actually got his arms around an intellectual project and did a great job with it was a thrilling moment for me. And to be able to say, no, even if your track record is shoddy up to this point, based on the performance, the skills that I just saw, I can recommend you for graduate school. How cool is that? And even if he doesn't decide to do it, the fact that I've been able to support the possibility, I think, is huge. I think it will make a huge difference in his experience as he recalls what undergraduate life was like.
Well, I've been trying to take notes again while we're talking, so I'm going to try this again. But just off your last point, one of the things that undergraduate students need at some point is a mentor, some sort of guide to help speak those things to them. So there's one thing. I also heard in what you said that undergraduate students need to have a transformation of identity from wherever they came in. They have to be somewhat malleable or open to change in the way that others are going to see them, and the way that they're going to see themselves. In this case, as a part of this, as contributing part of this community of scholars, would be the second thing that I think. And then the third one is to that point of your student who thought everybody just had an opinion like him. It does strike them at some point, and this is related to critical thinking, I think, is that is a transformed worldview. Mm-hmm. And so, maybe those things are unique to college, university, maybe not. But, if you just go into the workforce straight out of high school, I don't know that you are going to get that identity, that identity transformation, that probably to some extent, but maybe not the worldview transformation.
Well, yeah. I think it's a higher risk situation to go into the workforce. It's not safe, meaning that employers can decide they simply don't like the caliber of your work and you're out on your butt. Whereas in college, there's some leeway for you to be able to discover and to fail, as long as you're not, failing consistently and getting into misbehavior and that sort of thing. There is some latitude to be able to carve out who are you going to be. There isn't that in the workforce comfortably.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So let's just talk about it because we opened the door. What is it? What's different about being a psych major versus just an undergraduate student?
Just those other people.
Yeah, just those other people. Yeah.
This is one of my favorite topics because of my strong belief about the psych major being an unparalleled way to prepare for the workforce and for life after graduation because of the flexibility involved. I think our buddy Stephen Chu just recently wrote an article about psychology superpowers, and that's an eloquent way to talk about what I like to refer to as the psych advantage. That if you have a psych degree, you can do some things that your competitors coming at a job application from other disciplines can't do. Even if one example that is a superpower from Steve's list, but also was listed in my psych advantages, is that you have a much better understanding of how bias occurs, how easy it is to form bias, and how you need to back off from doing knee-jerk kinds of conclusions about things and about people until you get all the data in. And even then you need to be careful. That I think psychology teaches you a temperament that makes it easier for you to be able to manage change, that makes it easier for you to work with difficult people. I mean, I think the list of things that psych should empower you to do is just enormous. And since so many of our students in four-year programs end up absorbing this message that if they don't go to graduate school, somehow they're not a worthy student, that's a serious, serious problem for us in the discipline that we need to fix. That 80% of students who don't go on to graduate school have a wonderful opportunity to be ambassadors for psychology if we can train them to stop saying, I'm not doing anything with my degree. I'm running a store. Really? You're not doing anything with your degree, 4 years in psychology, and there's nothing that carries over. And so I regularly have that conversation with people I meet who say, I'm a psych major, I'm not doing anything with it. It's like, okay, that you've opened the door. Let's talk about that seriously, because I need to convert you. I need to seize this narrative to help us with the misconceptions about what psychology majors can do. It's an extraordinary range of things.
Well, let's go there, because a good mentor or guide, even beyond, I was thinking about this. We've had a lot. People will tell you. I've interviewed so many people on psych sessions, and they'll tell you about their education, but they'll tell you about all these classes they took, and maybe they can remember the teacher's name or maybe not. But they only remember one or two guides. There's just only one or two people that ever stick out to them. And so I think that what you're saying is that it may not be obvious to students, for example, that they need to be able to articulate the skills that they've developed and learned. Let's just say with a psych major, could be broader than that, but with the psych major, these superpowers. And it takes somebody, and I would say a mentor, who really cares and understands the student story, process, their next steps, to say to them, listen, you need to be able to identify the skills you have, so that you're not running a store one day and saying, I didn't do anything with my psych degree. Because there's a fundamental problem with that in my head. Does the student could they have those skills still? They just don't know that they're using them. Yes, but I think that there's something when they can articulate it explicitly. Maybe this decreases imposter phenomenon a little bit. Maybe
I think it would.
Yeah, right. Where they can say, well, I didn't just get lucky to have this store. No, I worked my butt off. I learned what it meant to reduce bias so that I wasn't going to offend somebody in a meeting or whatever those things are. So what I'm getting at here is that there are moments when we are working with students and through a student's academic career where certain mentors can step in and call students to some sort of important action. And the action here is perhaps an assignment or something like that, or I'm not sure, you can tell me how you do it, where we ask students, identify it, tell me the skills you have, because I want to prepare you for the next steps.
Well, I do think it can be done informally with a chosen mentor. And I think sometimes that happens in particular when students are applying to graduate school, because there tend to be conversations that transpire between the student and the recommender to be able to get a letter, if you're doing it right, to get a letter that's going to be persuasive. Mm-hmm. But I also think that good programs figure out a way to embed that very task in the final semester of what students are doing. So most individuals that offer a capstone course figure out some strategy for helping prepare students explicitly. And so what I do in the capstone designs that I have, regardless of the theme that I'm teaching, 1/3 of the course is about some theme, 1/3 of the course is about career preparation. Let's build your resume. Let's roll out an application letter for me and show me what you're going to look like when you're trying to seduce someone to talk to you. Tell me who your references are going to be. You don't have to have them write letters, but you have to tell me who they are and why you're asking them, which is a way of forcing who are your mentors, who've been transformational for you. And then the more challenging part is that I say, all right, so here's the APA guidelines for what you should know and do. prove it. Go back over what you've done and give me exemplars of the various things that we say as a major you should be able to do. Make that nice portfolio, and I will review that. But what happens in the next step is the most important part. This is just preparation. I match students to someone in the field that they want to go into, and I say, now your job is to go convince that person that you have met these criteria. You're going to have an hour-long conversation with someone that I've matched for you based on who you are. And in the end, they're going to tell me how well prepared you were for that conversation. You're either going to come back as distinguished, and please do that if you can, or they're going to say, competent, but needs a little work in these areas, or they're going to say, keep them in the oven because they're not done yet. And the process, by preparing the portfolio, they're talking to me. That's a dry run. Then they take the resume. They don't take the portfolio itself, but they take the resume to this external assessor, and the external assessor and that person have a conversation. I also tell the student they have to drive the conversation. The interview is conducted by the student. I'm here to demonstrate. And when I tell students that they're going to do this, they freak out.
Yeah.
I mean, they just go, criminy, is there another capstone I could get into? Because other people don't do this. I say, well, here's the thing. I know from doing this now for 8 years, that you will feel pretty darn good about this on the other side, because it's going to force the issue for you to sit back and go, well, what did I learn in statistics? Why did I spend tuition on the personality course? What kinds of things happen? What were the most important things that happened in me, and how does that make a difference in how I'm functioning? And so then,
go ahead.
Historically, students will, after the interview is over, they just effuse how important that experience was, that they didn't realize the depth of what they'd been through. They now recognize they can talk about themselves comfortably with skills they can defend. They're ready to go. And I just feel terrifically proud of them. And I would say about 75% of my students end up getting distinguished ratings from people that don't have a stake in this. I mean, they are listening to the students and they're saying, oh, these students, this is good. And some of them get jobs from the interviews that we set up. So it's a time-consuming step, but it does exactly what we're talking about, which is, can students tell how they have changed as a result of their learning? And we simply don't hold students accountable for that usually. They're a little bit scared of it, but they can do it. You just have to hold their feet to the fire.
Okay. So my first question is, how do you, where did these relationships come from for you to be able to match people, your students up with these folks?
Well, I've been in this area for 20 years, almost 20 years now. And so I've collected individuals over time that are good candidates. So I know if somebody wants to work with the military, I've got people in our vet center on campus who are more than happy to do this. I know if I have students that want to do a career in working with people on the spectrum, I match them to the folks who run the graduate program for ABA so that there's an opportunity to recruit. If they want to do counseling, that usually is the most popular and the hardest thing to do because those people are hard to schedule. But I have a cadre of people that are willing to do it. And most of the time when people do it, unless I have that rare clunkhead that goes out and does badly, most of the time the professional really enjoys the experience of being able to talk to somebody who's on the front end of that journey. It gives them a chance to tell their story, tell their journey, and potentially feel like they've got some fingerprints on the success of that student. So most people say, God, that was great. Count me in next semester. So it turns out not to be, I can usually assemble the matches in less than a day.
I'm having this thought right here, right now, and that is the responsibility for an educator to make themselves, the line between being a teacher or an instructor and a guide is one that I feel like, and I don't, I'll make you blush here a little bit, but you definitely have it's so obvious to me that you are a guide. You've crossed that threshold. But I think about myself, my former self, my current self. I think that hopefully other people are kind of reflecting on their own practice as educators. Just by nature of standing in front of a class or teaching a curriculum, that does not mean that you're a good guide or that you are giving students these kinds of opportunities. I've never heard you talk about this particular one before, so I'm stunned right now. I love it, and it's inspiring to me, and I hope other people as well, to think about how are we giving those. I think it's summative, right? Those summative moments.
It's summative.
Yeah, to students, to really show them, not only show us, but show them what they can do. And, I don't know when this occurred to you, this idea, but I'm sure that it's not the only time you do this in your courses. And it probably took you a while to come up with something like this. But I'm coming back to our hero's journey. A good guide has the responsibility to call students to action. And this calls students to action. You actually baked it into your course where you said, right. Well, you don't have to do it. You could fail this assignment, right? But you are not only preparing them, but you are sending them out. And this is the hero's journey. Those students coming back, that must be an electric day in class when they get to, or do they share with it publicly, or how do you deal with it?
Actually, we will be doing that this semester, given the weird convergence of things that I do in my capstone. I've got people who are live streaming and remote and face-to-face, and our very last class is going to be an opportunity to share what those experiences are. But I have to say, I'm also, now I've been at it long enough that I now have assessors who were in my capstone. And so they are giving back by being assessors to my students. And I just had a conversation last night with one of my students who was just so excited about the conversation that she had with a student that I had 4 or 5 years ago.
Very cool.
It's very reinforcing. And I have to say, getting it up and running was hard work. And I've worked on making sure that I don't impose too much on the teacher's time, and that I have to nag students a little bit about making sure that they get their appointments done. I used to do this asking everybody to come at the same time and do it in the same building. And that was madness making, because usually things would fall apart. But now the better arrangement is that students go to where the professional is so that they have a chance to see what the work environment looks like. And it just feels more professional. So I prefer that, and I don't have to bake stuff then.
Yep. Terrifying for students, though, isn't it?
They tell me, their eyes bug out when I tell them what we're going to do. Yeah. And they go, is this a requirement? It's like, yes. Because, why do you think I'm doing this? And then when we get to the why, you go, oh, okay, I get that this is it's going to be good for me. Yeah. And then they usually, because the protocol for the portfolio is fairly structured. Here's what you do this. And resumes, I usually ask them to revise the resumes that they turn into me so that they're psychology resumes, not just any old resume. And so I know they are prepared to go out and dazzle people under most circumstances. And they've got good reason to perform well, because they're talking to people that they want to become. They want to show that person, they want to be part of that tribe. So the incentive kicks in. And for the most part, it produces really good exchanges.
Well, the confidence that students get coming away from there, and just the experience, so that the next time when they're in a real interview, it's not the first time they've done
Correct.
This.
That's the goal.
Yeah. It's brilliant. I remember a friend of mine who was in, he got a business degree, and then ended up, he ended up in the workforce, and then he went and got his MBA, and this was all part of his plan. He's very driven. And I remember him, he was going to have this job interview, which is the first interview after he got his MBA. And I remember going to his house, and he was reading a book, and I said, "What are you reading?" He said, "I'm prepping for my interview." And it was a book. I don't know if it was a popular book or whatever, but he had found it was business specific, and it was interview questions. And it was, these are the kinds of answers you want to give. This is how specific to be. And he was going through them. I mean, this is a 200-page book, and he was just learning every single option so that when he got in there, he would know how to sell himself. He would know the pitfalls of what not to say, what to say. This is high level stuff. These were 6-figure jobs, and he was young to be in there, and he landed it, and always has.
Of course he did.
Yeah.
Of course he did.
Yep.
Right.
And it's because, and I don't know where he got, I should ask him next time I see him, like, where did you learn to do that? But I'm guessing somebody told him to. Somebody with more experience said, hey, read this book. This will help you out. I don't know. So it's the gift. It's the gift of preparation, and the end of the hero's journey is taking these actions, this action step, in order to be successful. So you call them to this step, and that step we're saying this will end in success for you. You're going to have more success with this under your belt than not. What other things can we give to our students, like what you've just described to us in this, with this kind of, it's not even fake, it's a real interview, but it maybe even will end up in a job.
It's a simulation.
It's a simulation.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Yeah. So are there any other things that we could think of that we call students to do as a part of psych major or not, that we would say this will directly lead to success for you? Trust me, do this.
All right, I'm a little biased here because my focus in the classroom, and maybe it's linked to Teacher Plus Guide, is it's always been about skill building. And so I'm very explicit in all of my classes when I put students in group projects to be able to say, now you're learning in this group project because it will make a difference in what kind of team member you'll be later on when you get employed. I try to give a kind of future horizon justification for the skills that I'm asking students to do. I'm going to ask you to do things you're not going to be comfortable with. I'm going to ask you to give a speech. And any class that you take with me, you're going to be talking. And that's paralyzing for some people. Do you need to do it? Yes, because you get over being paralyzed by doing it and by not by not dying. I have to say, this week, one of my students said she was up for the presentation in capstone, and she clearly was nervous. And she looked at me and she said, I'm going to pee, faint, throw up, pass out, and then die. And I said, well, I'm pretty sure that you're not going to do any of those. Have you been to the bathroom? Because we want to take care of that one. But I'm pretty sure you're going to be okay. And then she got up and scored something rare for me. She did a perfect presentation. I took no points off whatsoever. It was wonderful. And so to be able to see people make that transition, there's the reward for the guide, right? Yeah. It is incredibly powerful to see people shed the I can't do this mantle to be able to demonstrate competence at what you're asking them to do.
Isn't it funny that at no point in this conversation so far have we talked about content?
It's not funny from my end.
I know.
Yeah, content, for me, content is the context in which skills need to develop.
That's right.
If you're doing the right job for the student.
That's right. Yeah, and we do these things because these are the things that are going to lead students to success, and that's going to help them to avoid failure down the road, right? And one of the other things that we build into our students is a self-reflective practice, hopefully, where when things do go wrong, that they can understand it, and it doesn't defeat them, and that, and maybe we, like you even said last time we talked, if they've experienced some failure along the way, that it has given them maybe that skill of perseverance Or
I do think
curiosity. Yeah.
I do think that's a superpower connected with psych, whether I can't remember if it's one of Stephen's formal superpowers or not, but the capacity to persist. And if there's one characteristic that makes all the difference in success, regardless of what your path is after graduation, it is, can you identify a problem and persist with it through the obstacles, the disappointments, the setbacks, the failures? Can you persist? Can you keep at it? Can you, given sufficient evidence, can you redefine and redirect? I think psych is a great place to be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, as folks are listening to this and they're thinking about their own classes, so am I. And I want to, guide people to think about those summative assignments at the end of their courses where they can more explicitly measure skills and have students self-assess skills and show them off and reflect on exactly what they are, because that can be done at any level. I'm now thinking, and also think about the ways that you're already doing that. I'm thinking about my research methods course. And I remember talking to some of my my colleagues at four-year institutions who said, yeah, my seniors, they really don't, they still don't get research methods, even though they took it. It's, when they're graduating, it's not like they understand it. And so I said, and not all of them, but there's a certain amount of them. And so it's been a goal of mine with my students to tell them that, and to say, this is why we are going to work so hard at these particular things, because I want you to transfer over to the University of Washington. And I want a professor to say to you, where did you learn research methods? And I want you to be able to say, I'm very proud of the hard work I did in this class. And these are the skills that I gained from it. And so I think that we all have those opportunities, no matter if we're teaching a capstone class or, just a second year research methods class or something like that, right?
Well, I think research methods in particular is a course that all faculty should remember when they're teaching advanced classes to, I'm going to use the term interleave, that you need to remind students when you're talking about a new study, if you're teaching sensation and perception, to pause a moment and say, now, what's the independent variable? Mm-hmm. And were there any confounds? That we should do a better job of reminding students what they once learned. There's often a gap between methods and wherever you're hoping that method's knowledge will carry over, in part because we should know better, but we make the assumption they've had the class, they should know that stuff. Well, no, they had introduction to the content, and now they need practice. Yeah. And our job should be providing that practice.
Well, and it happens at every level. I'm right now part of a task force for statistical literacy and introductory psychology, an STP task force this year. And so one of the things that we did, and we've just been finishing up right now, so we're about to roll it out, is we took the 16 or so content areas in an introductory psychology course, and we created these assessments that are that really are rooted in statistical literacy, but that instructors are already covering in those chapters, in those content areas. And so exactly what you're saying, if we were just left to the model of the textbook, we would teach research methods and statistical literacy in chapter 1, and we probably wouldn't touch it again for the rest of the chapters.
I can attest to that, because years ago, back when I was an intro author, that's been a long time ago, one of the things that stunned me is how is it students are going to learn independent and dependent variable if, in fact, it's only in chapter 1 or chapter 2, and we never touch it again. And there's no specific discussion of any formal studies in the rest of the book. As large as the books were, we are not paying attention to the most important things that we want students to carry away in that class. So that task force sounds spot on. That's good.
Yeah, well, and I think it aligns with the work that you all did for the outcomes for intro psych, now APA policy, by the way. Right. And when you're talking about, that psychology is empirical, for example, and adapts as its new data develop. If that's an integrative theme, that's the invitation to work it through the course and connect it through the course. I think one of the challenges that I have looking back is that even when we saw something like the pillars model, which was a good idea for how to treat the content of a course, but they always had that foundation of research methods, right? But
correct.
But even as an instructor, if I looked at that and said, okay, the foundation of psychological science is research methods, nobody lent a hand to show me how do I do that in every one of these content areas. And so that's why I'm excited about this particular one. Yeah,
it sounds good.
It should be good. Okay, so there's some resources for folks too. And Jane, I believe we're close to finishing this conversation. We'll meet one or two more times, I think, and talk about kind of where this journey ends. And then I think we need to circle back and look at where we started and see if we are still talking about metaphors.
I'm not sure we are, but it's certainly been a fun journey.
Good. Well, it is the Thanksgiving holiday. So I'm going to timestamp this, and happy Thanksgiving to you, Jane. And I'm thankful for you.
Same to you. I'm grateful that we've had this time together.
Yeah, me too. Thanks.